I know a place that's peaceful and quiet, a place where animals play. It's called the forest, but every year we start forest fires. A careless match or cigarette and poof, fire. So the next time you're in the forest, be extra careful, okay?
If you knew it was me, would you have listened?
Something drastically different. Would you set them free in a place that has no rules, isolate them on an uninhabited island, and force them to live off the land instead of the state? These are real questions in the case of Simon Roberts and Adrian Guthrie, two boys who've made headlines around the world. Should who they are and where they came from determine how they're punished? Simon and Adrian are cousins, Tlingit Indians from Alaska. They were visiting Washington State last summer when they committed a brutal crime. About 10:30 on the night of August 31st, the boys borrowed a quarter, dropped it in this payphone, and changed Tim Whittlesey's life forever.
I do remember taking a phone call before I left on the delivery.
Whittlesey, a young man with a family to support, was delivering pizza, trying to make ends meet.
Went up on the delivery and walked up to the apartments that I was supposed to be going to, and got at the apartment and they didn't order any pizza.
As Tim headed back for his car, the boys ambushed him with a baseball bat.
I don't remember anything again until I was up in the hospital. They were putting me to a CAT scan.
The aluminum bat fractured Tim's skull, damaged his vision, and left him nearly deaf.
The victim's life has been turned upside down. Your lives have been rearranged. All of this for $40 and a pizza.
Yeah, that seems pretty stupid, doesn't it? That's less than a penny a day for being in prison. That's less than a penny a day.
The boys pleaded guilty, and under Washington State's mandatory sentencing law, Simon, who swung the bat, faces up to 5 years in prison. Adrian, 3.5.
All right, boys, you're going to prison. Too bad. See ya.
Don't even give us first offender rights or nothing. Don't even have anything on our record.
It seemed a case with no winners, a victim with permanent injuries and big medical bills, and the criminals, 17 years old, with no high school diplomas, heading for hard time in a state pen, far from their families and their Native American culture. But then out of that culture and into the courtroom came the most unlikely of legal heroes.
My name is Tlakuyesi, which literally means the first and oldest raven.
His English name is Rudy James. He's also a Tlingit Indian and a distant relative of the two boys.
So he's sort of like our great uncle or I forgot, but I know he's related to me and my parents in a way.
Rudy James carries an impressive list of credentials, an elder in his tribe, and most important, the lead judge on the tribal court of his clan, which he calls the Kuyu Kwan.
We have a reputation for adjudicating numerous other cases, and so both sets of parents requested that we intervene.
Rudy proposed that the boys be judged not by the white man's system, but by Rudy's own tribal court.
There's no question that they broke Tlingit law, and there's no question that they also broke the white man law. And so this was a matter of shame.
Shame on the tribe.
Until proper restitution is made, that shame and stain stays with the family, clan, and name until that procedure is completed.
So restitution is very important among your people.
It's a primary facet of the whole judicial system.
To make restitution, Rudy promised the court that the Tlinkits would pay Whittlesey's medical bills and more.
They're promising to buy us a piece of property here in the Snohomish County area and build us a duplex for us to live in from one side and to rent out the opposite side.
But it isn't the restitution that sets this case apart. It's the punishment. To a nation of overcrowded prisons and repeat offenders, Rudy proposes a radical alternative to jail time, unheard of in today's courts: ritual banishment.
Place each young fellow on an island by himself. They will not go together. They will not have mother and father to come home to have cooked meals or their laundry done.
How long will they be banished?
Generally, it would run from a period of anywhere from, say, 8 months to 2 years.
And what kinds of equipment will they be given to begin with?
They certainly will be given saws and hammers and axes, and there is no question that all of the elements will be there for their physical survival.
According to Rudy James, the islands the boys would be banished to would be somewhat larger than this one, between 2 and 10 square miles in size. Each would have a fresh water supply, game to hunt, fish to catch, and clams to dig. Now, nobody's saying exactly which islands those are, but here in southeast Alaska, there are plenty from which to choose.
Are you pretty confident you could survive this?
Yeah, I've grown up around my grandparents and my parents most of my life of learning how to hunt, fish, and survive off the land.
There's always a chance of something happening, but that's highly unlikely.
Last August, in a packed courtroom, Superior Court Judge James Allendorfer pondered what could be a landmark decision, a first for the American judicial system.
There is a positive force that this community is putting together which is unique in my experience.
The judge is willing to gamble on a completely different approach to crime and punishment.
I will try this project.
He agrees to release the boys on bond to give Rudy James time to prove that banishment can work.
Oh, Roz.
For the man Judge Allendorfer refers to as Judge James, it's a tremendous victory.
What about those who say, yeah, he's going to take those boys, spring them from jail, take them off to Canada or Alaska. The victims won't ever get a dime, and we'll never see them again.
It comes down to the word trust.
Pay close attention to what Rudy James is saying here.
I'm pledging my personal honor, representing my people as tribal spokesman. Our very reputation is going to be on the line.
And what is the reputation of Judge Rudy James?
He's a crook.
He's a #1 con man. Absolutely the tops.
Why are you running, Rudy?
Why is Rudy James running? What does Rudy have to hide?
When we come back, who is Rudy James? Respected tribal leader or scam artist? The answer when we return.
These are your targets. On the neck, behind the ear, inside the elbow. Now good luck on your first solo bite.
Mission accomplished.
Excellent. Ah, look, a commemoration. It smells sweet and good. Like rain!
Raid Flying Insect Killer. The patented clean-smelling formula kills bugs dead with no unpleasant odor. Get Raid from Johnson Wax.
What really happened on that Thursday here at Augusta High School that led to Chris Wood's death?
The fuck is that? Shit! I'm dying in this fucking country-ass fucked up town. Shit flying in my mouth. The fuck, I can't see pollen. Let's get the fuck out this country, motherfucker. I can't even see me. Okay.
Studio 3B in New York. Here is Jane Pauley.
Returning now to our story. Banishment is a unique punishment that had never before been imposed in the United States. The sentence was billed as a Native American tribal custom when it was proposed to a judge to punish 2 teenagers last year. But after John Scott did some digging, he found there's another side to the story and to the man proposing it.
It's called banishment. Drop 2 convicted criminals on separate uninhabited islands to scratch out a living in the wilderness and ponder the crime that sent them there. The sentencing judge likes the idea.
But I can take this particular case and I can say for these 2 young defendants, this is the best alternative.
The victim of the crime likes the idea.
I mean, I would like the restitution, but if this banishment could help the kids too, then I would really like that also.
The young criminals like the idea.
It's part of our tribe, our heritage.
And Rudy James, the man who proposed it, especially likes the idea of banishment.
As long as I can remember, and as long as there has been tribal law, this has been a very important facet of our judicial system.
Because we'd never heard of this ancient and traditional form of punishment, we came up to Alaska, to Klawock, where the boys grew up, to learn from the Tlinkits themselves how banishment works. Just one problem. No one here has ever heard of banishment either. Is there a long history of banishment among your people?
None whatsoever.
You'd think Bobby George would know. Bobby's a former mayor of Klawock, lived here all his life.
There's no such thing as banishment. Oh, how that ever started is beyond me.
So we asked his mother, Clara, a noted historian and keeper of Tlingit traditions.
There's no such a thing as banishment. There never was.
Clara says in actual Tlingit tradition, there's a much harsher penalty for people who steal.
So the traditional punishment for theft among Tlinkits
Yes,
is chopping off fingers and hands.
fingers and hands.
I don't suppose those boys would want to submit to
I
that.
don't think so.
Okay, forget banishment for a minute. Remember, Rudy James also pledges on his personal honor to see that restitution is made to the victim.
He's an honorable man?
Yes, he is.
He's a crook. He's a con man.
Bev and Arnie Jangord tell a whole different story about Rudy James. In 1982, they worked for Rudy on a fish processing boat he had leased, the Pacific Lady. Arnie was skipper, Bev was the cook and purser. How much money did Rudy James owe you?
Approximately $12,000.
And how much did he pay you?
Zilch. Nothing. Never paid us a penny.
So after the boat docked, Arnie says he confronted Rudy.
I says, well, it's about time you pay us some money now, isn't it, Rudy? And he just laughed. He says, get in line. He says, you're a low man on a totem pole.
Dateline contacted the owner of the Pacific Lady. He told us Rudy never paid him either, more than $25,000.
You looked into garnishing his wages?
Oh, yeah. I had an attorney do that.
Why couldn't you garnish his wages?
He doesn't have any wages. Doesn't have a job that anybody knows about. But he always has money.
The Jangords say if they'd had money, they would have sued Rudy James. When we checked his background, we found a lot of other people who have. Because when it comes to making restitution, some say His Honor the Judge has no honor at all.
You said that making restitution is very important, that the tribe is not whole until restitution is made. Some of your background indicates that there are at least 9 judgments outstanding against you as of April of this year, to the tune of some $60,000 that you have not repaid people.
I have no idea where those documents are coming from, and I have not examined, so I cannot comment on those.
Here's one in the amount of $21,300. John Orlando.
I do owe John Orlando money. There's no question I owe John Orlando money.
Well, let's talk about the case of Moorer versus Rudy James, a $20,000 judgment in 1986.
I don't know who the Moorer. I'm not acquainted with any Moorer. I have no knowledge of any Moorer.
Well, he's certainly not telling the truth if he doesn't remember me.
We found Bob Moorer. He's a dentist in Anchorage. He says he and a partner sank $20,000 into one of Rudy's fishing ventures. And despite the promissory note that Rudy signed, Moorer never saw his money again.
Then it looked bad. It looked like we'd been scammed.
Atlantis Credit.
I have no idea who they are.
Seattle Marine and Fishing Supply.
Well, I don't know.
Leaf and Industrial Collectors, filed in 1982.
I don't know what is involved there also.
But you yourself said that restitution is important, and it is very important where shame is brought upon the tribe, and you yourself have not made restitution in these cases.
But what about you folks making restitution to us? What about that?
Rudy says his debts are nothing compared with what the white man has taken from native people.
When you have billions of dollars worth of debt to us and you're talking about $60,000 I owe.
What about Carla Fail?
What about it? What's it say?
It says that you owe $17,000 in back child support.
That's true. I do owe that.
Rudy had a child with Carla Fail while he was still married to his first wife, Caroline.
Rudy James says that it is a matter of trust, that this whole issue revolves around trust. Would you agree?
In a sense, yes.
When Judge Allendorfer ruled in favor of Rudy's plan for banishment and restitution, he hadn't seen the list of Rudy's unpaid debts, so we showed it to him.
Does that bother you?
I have no comment on that.
A judgment of $20,000 remains unsatisfied. A judgment of $21,000 remains unsatisfied.
What you're doing is you're trying to impeach the credibility of a judge that another nation has selected as their lead judge.
Up in Alaska, we did some digging to find out just how Rudy became a tribal judge. We got some answers from Bill Thomas. He's deeply involved in Tlingit tribal affairs, and he's known Rudy James since they both were kids.
The tribal judge is normally elected, and so he had to be elected by a majority of his membership. And my guess that the endorsement list, in his case, wouldn't exceed the number 12.
If Rudy was elected by 12 people, who were those 12 people?
Immediate family members.
That's right. Look at the names on this list. As of 1991, the Council of Elders of Rudy's Kuyu Kwan Court. Under the signature of Rudy James, there's also Darrell James, Charles James, George James Jr., Embert James, Henry James, and Franklin James. They're all Rudy's brothers.
What's the reputation of the James family?
They're less than trustworthy, you know.
Bill Thomas is a polite man. We looked into Rudy's tribal council a little more and found that except for Rudy and his brothers George and Henry, every tribal elder has a criminal record, some dating back to the 1950s.
You're convinced that Rudy James is legitimate?
I'm not answering that question because it's irrelevant.
The judge says it's not relevant because he's not releasing the boys to Rudy James, but rather to a court comprised of judges from various tribes, which happens to include Rudy James.
I have taken the promise of the combined tribal court of the Tlingit Nation that they are going to do their best in accordance with their tradition to rehabilitate, punish, and provide restitution for the next 18 months. And the fact that Rudy James is the lead judge is their decision, not mine.
But in Klawock, we were told that there is no combined tribal court, that it's simply Rudy's invention, and that a lot of Tlingits are embarrassed and angry that Rudy James is involved in this case at all.
My organization has not chosen Rudy James to head any court.
Roseanne Demert runs the only tribal group in Klawock that's recognized by the U.S. government. Rudy's background aside, she says there's a more basic reason to keep him out of local affairs.
Does Rudy live in Klawock?
No.
Does Rudy live anywhere near there?
No.
Where does he live?
As far as I know, in Washington State.
Rudy has signed affidavits swearing he lives in Alaska, but all we could find there was a post office box. Members of his family say he really lives in the Seattle area and has for nearly 30 years. We checked his last listed address. It turned out to be a strip mall.
The walls are thin and we'd smell bacon.
The owners of the business next door told us they reported Rudy and his wife for living in a shop that was not zoned as a residence.
And they actually stayed here at night, got up in the morning. They would come out with wet hair and baskets full of dirty laundry. And my wife was getting really mad because the Connies were next door and she'd bang on the wall.
The Connies? Why do you call them the Connies?
Well, because we felt that they were conning somebody living here, not doing any business.
We thought that we would see him on America's Most Wanted because it was that bad.
Moments after Judge Rudy James scored that tremendous courtroom victory for his novel ideas on crime and punishment, we tried to ask him about all the new things we'd learned. It seemed to make Rudy uncomfortable.
A number of tribal historians say there is no such thing as banishment. That there is no such punishment and that you are a fraud out for your own self-interests.
NBC has no moral scruples.
Rudy, we found some more people who say that you owe them a lot of money.
I heard you were a queer.
Rudy, for a tribal judge, you owe an awful lot of people money.
Despite the concerns about Rudy, last September, Judge Allendorfer released the boys into his custody to begin their banishment. In a solemn ceremony, boycotted by many people in the boys' hometown of Klawock, the combined tribal court, including several of Rudy's brothers, with Rudy presiding, formally sentenced Adrian and Simon to banishment.
For a minimum of 12 months.
They shipped out for remote Kuyu Island, which Rudy said was ancient tribal land. But the Forest Service disagreed and ordered the boys to get off in April of this year. They did, moving to a place called Wadley Island. And where is Wadley Island? It's hardly the remote wilderness Rudy had described. In fact, it's literally within sight of the boys' houses in Klawock, just a 15-minute boat ride away. You can also see Wadley Island from the Department of Motor Vehicles in nearby Craig, where Adrian Guthrie, supposedly banished, showed up last month to apply for a driver's license.
He had to come to the police department through the lobby of the police department in full view of any officers that happened to be there. You know, and obviously had no qualms about doing that.
And it's a short jaunt from Wadley Island to the home recording studio of Simon Roberts' father, Alvin. Simon went there recently to record a rap song about his banishment.
Banished to one island for my rehabilitation, as I've heard.
Simon's family says it's a good thing the island is so close because it has no drinkable water.
We have to come and take out about 15 gallons of water out to them every 3 to 4 days.
The families bring plenty of groceries as well, even though when the banishment was first proposed, Rudy said the boys would be living off the land. And what about Tim Whittlesey, the man the boys attacked in the first place? A year ago, he was promised restitution worth about $200,000. But the combined tribal court admits so far it's only raised about $200. Adrian's mom didn't want to discuss the banishment with us, but Simon's mother says it's working just fine.
He's a lot more polite, and then he tells me a lot about how that he is sorry about all this had to happen.
The prosecutor disagrees.
I don't think it's sufficient for convicted robbers to be supervised by their parents and grandparents, no.
And where has Rudy been all this time? For the most part, in Seattle. Their families say he's personally checked on the boys only 3 times in the last year. But Rudy has written a screenplay treatment about the banishment case.
Sort of like Judge Ito negotiating on the screenplay while he's in the middle of presiding over the trial.
Apparently, there are, as yet, no takers for Rudy's movie.
Both Rudy James and Judge Allendorfer spoke to us off camera for this story. Both acknowledged the banishment has not gone as they had hoped, but the judge said he has not yet made a decision whether to order the boys back to jail.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York. Only